Hello everyone, this is Richard. Welcome to another edition of Starfield Essentials. In today's video I'm going to demonstrate the Astroneer mod by Codegangsta. It starts by visiting Aria Collins, who is stationed at New Atlantis on the second ramp. And once we watch the ship land, we're going to run over and talk to her.
There's the captain everyone's been talking about. I'm Aria. I'll be your design lead for all ship contracts here at Atlas. Let's talk ship. You're about to dive into the nuts and bolts of starship customization. I'll pull the bare bones into the landing pad back there, and you put the soul into it. Match the client's requirements, and we're golden. Currently, our parts bin isn't exactly a treasure trove, but hey, help us with some research projects, and we'll get you the shiny stuff. Alright, Cap, let's get to work.
After talking to Aria, we have to head over to the mission board that is near where our ship lands. On the mission board, we will see a new class of job. It will have the prefix Atlas. Atlas is the name of the Astroneer Incorporation that Aria works for. I'm demonstrating this with a level 1 character. So I created this character using the SKK mod's Fast Start mod, which I've shown in previous videos. And as you can see on the mission board, we have an Atlas Wanderlust. It is a Class A Explorer, 16 grav jump, 280 minimum fuel, 450 minimum hull, 16 minimum reactor, and 1 computer core. And if we achieve this, we build a ship like this, we will get 5,000 credits. What I recommend you do is to write down the characteristics of the ship that you need to build. They'll appear here in the menu and in a few other places, but honestly it's just easier to work with a piece of paper or perhaps your phone and write down the details for the ship you need to build. You might be wondering, well, wait a second, do I have to buy a ship? How am I going to get a ship to build here? Well, this is where we're going to go back to Aria and we're going to get a ship from her that we can use as the basis for this build.
What's our design mission this time? I've got an explorer that's seen galaxies galore. Ready to turn it into a space legend? Sure thing.
Once in the ship builder, you'll see your ship, the Frontier, and any other ships you happen to have. And you'll see the new ship that will serve as the basis for construction in order to meet the client's requirements. In this case, we have a ship called Wanderlust. It looks like it's a Discovery class ship, the same class of ship as the Frontier. What's cool about the Astroneer mod is that you can make all the changes you want to this vehicle and it doesn't cost you anything. Now, you're not going to own this ship when you're done. You won't be able to sell it, and I'll show that in another part of the video. But you can now experiment. You can essentially play around with shipbuilding in order to make the requirements of the contract that you have signed up for. This is what I really like about this mod. So in the following sequence, I'm going to essentially tear apart this Discovery class ship, and I'm going to try to make changes that will meet the requirements of the build that I have. This build ended up being surprisingly difficult. I'm not an expert ship builder, but the problem I was facing was that I'm using a level 1 character, so I only have access to the parts that a level 1 character would have. I don't have any special starship design skills, for example, and I'm only able to use the parts that are available essentially at New Atlantis. So you're very limited in what you can work with. And I had to get the hull size to at least 450 while still maintaining 16 light years of jump space. I had to have a computer core. Basically, I had access only to Class A parts. So I had to just barely get to the hull size by adding in weapons, believe it or not. That was able to get me to 450 minimum hull. And I had to fool around with a lot of this. I tried trying to increase the hull size by using a different cockpit. I tried adding in more fuel. I was trying everything I could think of in order to get this to work. Eventually I realized that I needed to switch out these engines because the engines can add a decent amount, so I ended up adding on these engines that you can see here that I'm adding to the video right now. And once I was able to do that, I was able to get this ship to meet the requirements. Now, with this build and the other builds that are in this short series of videos, these are not the prettiest ships that you'd have. I'm going to share my own idea and aesthetic for shipbuilding in later videos. The purpose of this series of videos is simply to show how to use the Astroneer mod in order to accomplish essentially a new form of mission, which I really enjoy. I think it's cool that you can get paid for ships. Literally with a level 1 character, I'm making 5,000 credits, assuming that I can get the build to meet the requirements. And here I am at the end of the build. I've got some weapons out, and I'm slowly working my way to the point where I have 450 hull. And it turns out I'm just able to get to 450 hull by adding in the weapons that are required. So the ship doesn't come out looking like the coolest ship by any means, but it does meet the requirements. And it was my first chance to use the Astroneer mod and to successfully build according to a client's requirements. And as you'll see, Aria thought it was fine. I recommend that after you build your ship, but before you talk to Aria, you go outside and you look at your ship and walk around it, which I'll show in a later part of the video.
Those sensors are top-notch. It's a Galaxy Whisperer now. Credits are on their way to your account. Until we meet again.
And with the completion of the contract, my ship takes off into space, and I am free to do more building if I am so inclined. Back at the mission board, we see that we have another Atlas job waiting for us for the Astral Arbiter, and it turns out this is a Class A fighter, but it has all of the same requirements as the Class A Explorer that we just finished. So what this shows you is that at level 1, or in this case I guess level 2 because my character just leveled up to the experience of this job, you don't have a lot of flexibility as far as the ships that you can build, or at least Codegangsta, when he built this mod, only built in so much flexibility for a low-level character, and that's going to scale as the game moves on and you progress in levels. But for now, you're kind of stuck with building at a certain level. This is assuming that you're starting at level 1. So I'm going to go back to Aria. I'm going to pick up the ship and start building.
Hey there, Cap. What? This Explorer's got Wanderlust. Think you can make it the envy of the cosmos? Of course.
Now, back in the shipbuilder, you'll see we have the same Discovery class ship, except this time we're going to be building it to have a Class A fighter build, even though it's going to essentially fulfill the same requirements as the previous ship. So what I'm going to do is put the lessons I learned in building the previous ship to work in this one, and essentially build the old ship as fast and as accurately as I can. The lessons for this build were essentially to extend the ship by adding the computer core. That was something that was required explicitly in the build. Also was to use those specific engines, because those would give me the mass and thrust that I would need to meet the client's requirements. And then finally I had to add in exactly the right amount of weapons to get the hull over 450, and I was able to do that. After completing this build, one of the tasks I wanted to do was to go see the ship waiting for me. I wanted to jump inside, see what it looked like before I handed it over to Aria, because if you remember in the previous build, as soon as I submitted it to her, the ship took off into space. Unfortunately, once I finished building the ship, it wasn't to be found. So I just decided to submit it to Aria anyway and get credit for the mission.
Hey, what exciting project are we looking at today? Great update. It's a real Cosmic Explorer now. Contract's all wrapped up, and so is your payment. Looking forward to the next one.
I got credit for the mission, but there was no ship. It didn't take off, didn't go into space, there was nothing there, but my ship was waiting for me. For the final part of this video, I'd like to show you the difference between building with a level 1 character and a level 60 character. I'm using a bat file that I created myself that I'll share at a future date, or it may already be shared by the time you watch this video. This essentially creates a level 60 character with all the skills that you would need to build ships and unlock pieces. Now, it turns out this isn't everything that you would need if you're going to meet the Astroneer requirements, and I'll have to go into those in a future video as well. But with this new level 60 character, I have access to ship parts that get unlocked at all the levels through level 60. So here you can see this particular character has level 60, has access to starship design at level 4, and that's one of the primary skills that you need to build more advanced ships. After a save and load, we go to the mission board and we see we have a job now for Atlas called a Quantum Quest. And this is a Class C luxury ship that has a requirement for 22 passengers, 16 windows, a mobility of 100, 3 living space, and 2 captain's quarters. So this is a much different design than what we're looking at with those Class A ships. Also, you'll get 15,500 credits for successfully completing this design. This sounds like a good one, so we'll take it, and we'll build it for Aria.
Welcome back. Any new adventures? There's a floating 5-star hotel here. Think you can add star number 6? Absolutely.
I'm going to be honest with you. Aria said that this could potentially be a 5-star floating hotel, and by the time I got done with this ship, it was more like a 5-story apartment building. This was a bigger challenge than I expected, and the main reason was that I needed to have passenger space for 22 people, and I'd never built a ship that would carry 22 passengers before. So what I ended up doing was using the living quarters 2x1 and having to stack. I can't even remember how many I stacked in this ship. So you'll see I basically tore the ship apart. I put on the engines that gave good mobility from last time, and already you can see that mobility is 100. And having a 100 mobility in a Class C luxury ship I thought was a little odd, but that was fine. The other challenge that I had here was having 16 windows, and initially I thought, how am I going to get the windows on this ship? So I started tearing apart the sides, trying to make room for putting portholes in various locations. And then I realized by checking on the little menu that appears in the upper left hand side of the screen, I was not meeting the passenger requirements for this ship. I had to add way more living spaces. So that's when I started stacking in those 2x1 living quarters wherever I could find them. And once I was stacking those living quarters, that gave me all of the room that I needed to put windows, and windows weren't a problem whatsoever. As you can see in this build, I was also sort of stuck in my old mentality of ships that have a long, narrow design, and I think I will take away from this build that you can go wide as well as going up. And in a future build, I will build a ship that is not like a flying apartment building, as you can see here, although you certainly wouldn't miss this ship if you were to see it flying around in orbit. I think it's got a very distinct look to it. Thankfully this time the ship was waiting for me before I submitted it to Aria, and I was able to take a look at it, walk around a little bit, see what this thing looks like from the outside. I have to say the gold portholes on the side look pretty cool, but otherwise the ship is quite a monstrosity.
For more, I see. You've raised the bar. It's luxury cruising at its finest. Reward sent, mission accomplished. You did great, Cap.
If this is luxury cruising, I'm not sure I want to take part, but there goes the ship. I'm happy I built it. My name is Richard. If you like this episode of Starfield Essentials, please feel free to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for part 2, and I will see you in the Starfield.